Hello and welcome to Zonie Living, Business Adventure and Leadership. I'm Bonnie Stevens. Hey, what would it look like if going to work was life-changing? Renowned organizational psychologist Dr. Elise Cortez likes to ask that question. She not only answers it in her book, The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business, she demonstrates how purpose-driven companies inspire employees to wake up excited about going to work. She's with us today and focusing on helping us live with gusto. Welcome, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Bonnie, thanks for having me. This is so great to be on your program.
Oh,
Thanks.
fantastic. It's so good to see you. And, I know that you are a bold leader. I can tell that through your book. You call it like it is. Your book is refreshing, it's inspirational, and it's honest. I love how you describe so succinctly what the pandemic did to us in terms of business paradigms, calling these days unprecedented times, and how people around the globe have reconsidered how they wish to live, who they are connected to, and what terms they want to work. Would you please elaborate on the shift that happened in seemingly a blink of an eye?
Yeah, for sure. And here's what's interesting about that, Bonnie. It really wasn't so much a blink of an eye, so much as it was like the tipping point. Like we had been experiencing the tension between experiencing really meaningful work and work that worked for us in our lives for a good 10 plus years. And the pandemic just really brought it home as to really what was missing and how things were awry in our overall lives. And so that forced stop, if you will, like it was really it was a collective heart attack, if you will.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it it gave us the chance to really recognize and take stock of what was working in our lives and what wasn't. And seldom have we had any time where we've literally been screeched to a halt like that, right? And been able to forcibly take stock of really who we are, what we stand for, what we want of our lives. And that's one of the things that the pandemic did for us.
Absolutely. And I believe you would describe it as a universal awakening that arose from the quiet that COVID-19 brought with it. And for those of us who joined the workforce in the high heels of the women's movement, where we could have it all, we could have a high-powered career, a husband and children, we could work out with Jane Fonda, always looking energized and feeling great and preparing amazing meals with Julia Child, while of course juggling our children's schedules and having them in everything from chorus to bands and soccer to plays. And wow, I think I and many, many people felt like they were running, literally running through the 80s and the 90s. So in contrast, that hush that fell across the land during the shutdowns of the pandemic was eerie, no doubt, but it also slowed the world down. And I so admire you for pointing that out and explaining what that time really did for us. You mentioned something about change doesn't happen when everything's going well.
It really doesn't. And so, the pandemic, one of the things that I really appreciated about it is it gave people that place, right? To be able to consider, you know what, I actually hate a 90-minute commute each way to my job. I actually hate that I miss my kids' band practice and their games, etc. I really dislike that my boss screams at me when they're frustrated, right? These things. And actually really not even sure I like the company that I'm working for. I'm not sure I can get behind what it is that we do. And so you're right. One of the things that I'm so aware of as an organizational psychologist is that we really do grow more when we're moving through challenge, when things are difficult. That is a catalyzing force that allows us to transform. It doesn't happen when we're eating bonbons on the couch, right? It just doesn't. Sitting watching our favorite program on TV. It's the struggle. It's the way we challenge and struggle through and persevere through that challenge that makes all the difference. And I would say has the direct relationship to the amount of growth that we actually realize on the other side.
Boy, great words. Dr. Cortez, you also talk about bringing passion back to the workplace. You write, why not create a workplace of play where your team feels like they're on the playground again, joyfully creating masterpieces in the dirt? You say people across the world have lost their childlike playfulness and don't know how to regain it, nor how to discover and live their purpose and passion. What happened to us?
Mm. And in a nutshell, Bonnie, I would say what happened is there was this thing called an accumulation of life and years, right? So we start off as joyful children, we can express that we're so grateful, so glad, so happy, and so mad and so frustrated. And then we start going into school and we learn that some of those emotions aren't appropriate. We keep those to ourselves. And then we get into the workforce and we learn that we really have to keep some of our emotions to ourselves if we want to get promoted. And we certainly better not cry or be upset or frustrated
Oh
at
boy.
work. And so by the time I meet people in their, late 30s or 40s, their emotional spectrum is down to this teeny little slice of what it used to be. And so part of the reason that I so encourage the passion work is that when you see people in organizations going after what they're passionate about, what happens is not only does it raise their own energy, but then it positively infects everyone else around them. And that's why I advocate for let's get passion back in the workplace, even if you're just giving your employees, say, 10–15% of their time to go and pursue what they're passionate about.
Oh, great idea. Well, I find it really interesting that you talk about fear. You talk about fear as something that can hold us back and keep us from our best selves, but also the flip side, you discuss how fear can be a motivator.
Yeah, I have really found that even in my own life, Bonnie, when we get present to what are we afraid of, that tells you that's vital data speaking to you right there. If something tells you you're afraid of something, it's perhaps because you feel threatened by it. That's one thing. Or you feel intimidated. You're afraid that you can't actually reach it, but that fear is telling you something.
Hmm.
So on the one hand, it keeps us safe, right? That's fear is an essential emotion that when there's a charging tiger coming at us, we know to run because we've been activated by the emotion of fear. But also, when we are afraid and we feel like that's too big of a goal, that really tells us there's something to that. And let's pay attention to that and find ways to go after it, whether we marshal other resources to help us along, we muster the courage, we do it anyway, whatever it is. But what happens though, Bonnie, is if we allow ourselves to be just governed entirely by fear, we will limit our lives.
Hmm. Well, here's a word that we hear a lot about in the post pandemic business world, and that's retention. Small businesses everywhere are struggling with how to hang on to good workers and also how to avoid losing them to burnout. What do you suggest?
Oh, there's so many things to that. And one of the things that we know, Bonnie, is one of the reasons that there's two main reasons that people tend to leave organizations. The first one is always their manager, their relationship with their manager, which can be addressed, through behavior and communication improvements. But another big one is they don't feel like they're learning and growing. Many organizations don't invest in their people. So if they were to invest in helping them to understand, say, their strengths or help them better develop other skills that will make them still more marketable in the future, or learn to better communicate or better manage conflict. We don't learn how to navigate conflict in school. And so here we are in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, struggling with little things like conflict. So those are just a few things. And then what if we did give ourselves over to passionate work? That would go a long way in making people not want to leave. And then, of course, I can't resist. We'll probably get to this eventually, but when people understand that they themselves are part of an organization that they can be proud of because the organization has a purpose that's mighty and one that they can align with and thread their own purpose through, that's really a tremendous retention tool.
Yes, for sure. You know, you touched on something, and I heard this recently. I was talking to an organization, the leader of an organization, about workforce development, professional development, and workshops that I was proposing might be good in communications. And there was this, he helped me understand this fear or concern that people didn't want to take resources away from the organization. They were worried that the organization needed that money elsewhere. And I know that the leader was frustrated with that as well. So I don't know if that's something that's come out of the pandemic, but there's that word fear again. People don't want to take from away from something.
Hmm. Well, that's a scarcity mentality, as you know, right? If
Mm-hmm.
we're thinking we're going to take away from something, that means that we believe the pie is one size, that it actually can't be expanded, or that if it also denies the whole idea that if we were to utilize those dollars to develop communication skills in the organization, in the people that are powering it, that we would actually increase productivity, creativity, innovation, and likely customer satisfaction in a much more uh, a bigger way that really would demonstrate the ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a term that I heard in your book. I've never heard it before. DEIB. It stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And to help readers understand what it feels like to be left out, you took us back to grade school where we chose teams. And through your book, I was right back there on the basketball court, lined up, ready for the team leaders to decide who were the better players. And that's kind of cringe. That made me cringe.
Yeah. Well, it is cringeworthy. You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, and that's exactly what I wanted to do was to restore that feeling that I think most of us have had in our lives of when you know when you're not wanted.
Mm.
People say you're different, you're other, you're not like me. I don't like you and I don't want you. That is communicated in all manner, not just words, gestures and the way you look at them. If you ask them to come and join the meeting, the initiatives, etc., all of that gets conveyed. So diversity is, of course, having a different set of perspectives, not just, race and gender, but there's all kinds of ways to look at diversity and how people were reared, what parts of the world they lived in. The equity piece, of course, is giving people equal opportunity. Um, um, Diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Now the B is for belonging. So people, that's sort of a new term, and that really speaks to how people feel like I have a place here. People have saved a seat for me at the cafeteria. I belong here, and people know when they belong. And when people feel like they belong, they will speak up and lend their voice and give their talents and their strengths. And if they don't feel that they belong, they won't. And then there's one more letter that's since come out since the book, Bonnie, and that's A. That's for accessibility. And this really speaks to helping everyone who maybe has limited mobility or limited ways to be able to experience the world to fully access the world of work. So access it equally.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Well, another important element in the Great Revitalization, you talk about humans as irreducibly spiritual creatures, which you say has only recently gained visage in today's business world. So, in my public relations consulting work, I call it soul. In your book, you call it soul. You write, a soul in the business sense can be defined as the vital force behind the animated activities that brings the entity to life. Please share how soul is showing up in business.
Oh my gosh. So what you just quoted from is from Stephen Morris. I mean, as you know, my book is very well researched, and a lot of these people were on my podcast, which is how I learned about them. But
Yeah.
increasingly, Bonnie, we are seeing that spiritual intelligence, spiritual quotient is being measured in organizations. The more advanced, forward-thinking organizations are doing that. And what I want to share with you is I am doing some work with a digital transformation company here in Dallas, and to illustrate what this kind of looks like. And this really speaks to my work of helping organizations to detect and articulate their purpose and then thread it into their culture. But there's an organization here in the Dallas area called Sela Digital. And just let me read their purpose statement because this speaks to soul. So this is a technology company. And this is what their purpose is. At Sela, we exist to champion the missions of companies that seek to create positive change. Driven by faith and guided by compassion, we amplify operational efficiency and effectiveness through innovative leadership and people transformation. Together, we create ripples of impact that nurture and uplift lives, ensuring that businesses thrive from within and serve their communities with lasting, meaningful change.
That's almost poetic. It's
It is
beautiful.
almost poetic,
Yeah.
and that's worth getting up for and persevering for, and that's why it works.
Wow. Well, in the Great Revitalization, you give the best descriptions that I've ever heard of purpose, mission, vision, and values, which can be really helpful to those responsible for defining those in organizations. I also enjoyed how you state that your calling, your purpose in life, is not something we get to decide. It's something we detect. I love that. So, how do businesses go about detecting their calling?
Yeah, and that's from Dr. Galati's work as well. He wrote a book called Deep Purpose. It's fantastic. And that's some of the work that I help organizations do because it's hard work, Bonnie, because your purpose is so much the water that you swim in, it can be hard to separate it or put it into language.
Mm.
And so when I talk about this idea of detecting, what I like to do with companies is help them, what I say, wild alive scratch for it. So what I mean by that is if I go into an organization and I say, hey, what's the purpose of this organization? And the people kind of work at trying to put it together and to articulate it and to say it. Or sometimes they're looking, ferociously for something that's written on the wall someplace. But what it needs to do is it needs to be sourced organically from them. And then once we have that, that individual voice, then we fold it into the collective voice, and we start then together to sift and refine that purpose, mission, vision, values together as a team. And it's not something that gets issued from leadership to the team. It's generated together by everyone. They detect it together.
Wow. Well, you discuss elevating your company purpose with beauty, which you write is about recognizing that business is far more than a profit machine, but rather a vehicle for self-expression. I love that, and it does sound beautiful the way you write that.
Well, there is so much good we can do in the world through business. And increasingly, I think more and more people across the globe are looking to business to help better the world, really, in lieu of government and even religion in some ways. And so it's a big job. But if you can just as a simple example, Bonnie, just thinking about the creativity that you can have in a business to express a purpose and lift the world and make it beautiful. Just there's the Akola project that started in Dallas by a white woman who went to SMU. And as she was graduating from college, just before she graduated, she decided to take a trip to Uganda. And she went there and she saw so much poverty, but she also saw the women working together to help each other raise their children, feed each other's children. And she was so impressed. And she said, gosh, I have so much. I need to help. So what she realized is these women need a source of ongoing recurring revenue. So she said, one of the things they do is they sit around the village together and they make this jewelry. I can buy that jewelry on a regular basis, give them that reoccurring revenue. Then what does she do? Is she takes it back to Dallas, and now she hunts for another group that she can help and lift. And who is that? These are a group of women who have been sex trafficked, who've been now working through another organization to get their lives back together.
Wow.
And then she gives them a living wage, and their job is to add precious pearls and gems to this jewelry to increase its attractiveness and value.
Oh my gosh.
And then what does she do? She needs a distribution channel. So she finds Neiman Marcus, who is all too happy to represent this jewelry because they love the story behind it. They want to champion that story. And people are happy to buy it because they want to be part of the story and help. But then, wait, there's more. She then takes those proceeds and she goes right back to Uganda and she builds schools and dams.
Oh, wow.
Now, that is,
Yeah.
now it's not a purely, profit driven business. It's a social enterprise, but that is a great illustration of the beauty that and the personal and purpose expression that is available to us as business people.
Boy, that is just beautiful. The meaning behind the work and bringing that full circle. I just love that story. So, Elise, Dr. Cortez, thank you for reminding us that work can be invigorating and that a purpose-driven company that inspires employees to persevere and with passion is eminently achievable. It's been delightful being able to speak with you on Zonie Living. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Bonnie. Really appreciate you.
Dr. Elise Cortez is the Chief Ignition Officer at Gusto Now, a management consulting firm specializing in the activation of meaning and purpose. She is also an inspirational speaker, organizational logotherapist, social scientist, author of 4 best-selling books, and host of her own Working on Purpose podcast. Her most recent book, The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business, is available on Amazon, and you can reach her at elise@elisecortez.com. Dr. Elise Cortez offers many valuable tools in the Great Revitalization for navigating and participating in today's work environment, and also some timeless nuggets, including this one. She writes, when we can experience love in work, it yields access to the emotion of joy, which is known to boost the immune system, reduce stress, and increase longevity. In other words, it's good for our health to find what we love and to live it as much as we can. This is Zonie Living, Business, Adventure, and Leadership. I'm Bonnie Stevens.